What's up, Rick?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Man, all is well. Good to see you and good to see everybody that's connecting with us on all of our platforms, YouTube, MySpace, Instagram, um, Black, whatever all that stuff is, couples mingle, singles
Oh,
mingle,
wow.
wherever you're connected with us from. We so super appreciate you. Saturday after Saturday, man, for since the pandemic started, we've been coming to you on Saturdays
This
telling
is
you
this is episode 28.
28 weeks
28
of
weeks,
like
sir. We've been doing
full
this.
force.
Yes,
Thank you
sir.
for this partnership, man, and sharing these nuggets of insight and information weekly for pastors, entrepreneurs, consultants, digital content creators, social media influencers, corporate executives, educators, everybody, lottie dottie, and everybody. People who are really purposed in life, who are driven to maximize their potential, mobilize their purpose, and multiply their productivity. So we thank all of you for plugging in. We've got a great show today, an impactful show. Rick, how have things been for you this past week, sir?
It's been amazing. I've been looking forward to today, as we were saying in the virtual green room. I feel like this subject is very timely. It is relevant to the times, and it's something that needs to be said. There are some subjects that deafen by silence. The need is so great that for us to be silent about it can be deafening. And so I'm glad to be on this platform and to be partnered with you and excited about the illustrious guest that we have, this enigmatic figure. I call her superhero in feminine form. I'm so glad that she's with us. And just in case you want to make sure you're on the right visual podcast, this is The Revolution Will Not Be Televised. It will be streamed, where we talk about life and leadership in the digital age. Stephen, I've got to make an appeal if you don't mind. Before we
Go
get
for it,
into
man.
this show and before you officially welcome our guests, here's what I need. I need everybody watching. If you're connected to a senior pastor, if you're on a church staff, or you're connected to somebody on church staff, I need you to call them, wake them up. I know they trying to sleep in. Get them out their bed. No, they ain't got to get out the bed. Just tell them to reach over, get their phone. Phone's probably already under the pillow anyway. They went to sleep with it. We need them to get on Facebook. They can go to Stephen's Facebook, my Facebook, Ashley's Facebook. Uh, Go to The Revolution Will Not Be Televised. It will be streamed group, and join right now. Go on YouTube. But they need to see this today. Parents need to see this. Counselors and youth leaders need to see this. I'm trying to tell you what we're getting ready to talk about today, and Stephen is going to give our subject in just a moment when he welcomes our guests. You got to see this. So, pastors, I need you to call your cohorts, your compadres. Tell them to watch this today, because with all that's happening in our world, especially when it comes to women empowerment, the church in particular has been lagging behind. And we've let a lot of things sort of seep through the cracks. We've overlooked some things. And we've left a demographic of our culture vulnerable, namely women. And we're going to deal with it today. We're going to uncover it today. Stephen, that's what we do. We've been doing that
Yeah.
before we ever started this show.
Yes.
We just got together on it, and we've been hitting it with full force. So, Stephen, give our subject, introduce our guest today, so we can get into this conversation. I don't want to waste a moment of her time, because
Sure.
she has both a message and a ministry that has
Yes.
created a movement, and we will be better by what we hear today.
Yeah. So, Rick, one of the common themes throughout our 28 weeks of sharing has been partnership.
Yes.
And that's how Ashley and I actually met. We had him on several weeks ago, Pastor Mark Moore Jr., amazing guy with the Young Leaders Conference.
Mm-hmm.
And it was through the Young Leaders Conference, which brings together people from across the globe, literally, in that place called Atlanta, the city of Atlanta. And we were there, and Ashley and I were able to connect, build rapport and relationship. And she has been super supportive and helpful behind the scenes with a whole lot that I do. So I want to publicly thank her. And from there, friendship was formed, got to hear more of her story, her life, and what she's dealt with, overcome, and fought through, and thought that this subject, the silence of the lambs, I saw no other face in mind when that idea came to mind but Ashley's, because her story is so compelling. It's so needed to hear because there's been so much silence among the lambs in the Christian community.
Mm-hmm.
And it always intrigues me, people with their prophetic gift. They can see a young lady wilding out, and they can be so in tune with her acting out and, living a lascivious lifestyle, but they never get to the source in many instances. We want to deal with the symptom and not the source.
Right.
So if you're so tapped in and you can see all this other stuff, how she's so fast, why can't you tap in to see that she's being molested and abused?
Exactly.
If you really tapped in.
Right.
I got another title for that, but we'll deal with that on another show. But want Ashley to have the opportunity to share her story because people weren't tapped in. And even today, after she's told her story, there's still people that aren't tapping into the truth that she seeks to speak.
Or
So
they're
Ashley,
tapped in but choose to ignore it because it would encroach upon, never mind, their
yeah,
peccadillos, their proclivities. Yeah.
yeah, all of that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. So welcome to the revolution, Ashley. We're excited that you're here.
What an introduction to give a guess, right?
I'll never have another one like it.
Right.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. I'm grateful for every opportunity that I get to share, not just my story, but what God has done with my experience and what He's continuing to do. And then also raising awareness for the purpose of creating social change. One of the things that I have learned in this line of work is a lot of people get passionate about change and they get passionate about social issues. But when it comes down to it, they don't really have the wherewithal to do the work to create the social change. They'll make a post, they will attend, a protest, and then it stops there until the next tragic thing happens, and then they pop up again. And so one of the things that I really want to encourage people to do is to be consistent in this work and be consistent with wanting to change. And so a part of my job, I'm the director of partnerships at Darkness to Light. Darkness to Light is a global nonprofit that empowers adults to prevent child sexual abuse through awareness, education, and stigma reduction. And we have facilitators throughout the globe. We have about 12,000 facilitators in our organization that train adults on child sexual abuse prevention. And so it has been an honor to fit into this role. It's very new for me. And again, that is something that God did for me because I never would have imagined that there was a role that was so perfect for what God has allowed me to experience. So I will give you guys a little bit of my story.
Yes.
And if you all want to ask any questions, I'll be more than happy to help or to answer those questions. And I do want to give a trigger warning for any of those who have experienced sexual abuse or any type of connection to suicide. It is totally okay if you feel like it is not something that you're ready to hear, but I do want to give that warning to you all. So I am a survivor of child sexual abuse. I've had multiple experiences with child sexual abuse. The first experience being at around 3 or 4 years old when I was actually raped by a family member. And because of that rape, they were a teenage male relative. And because of that rape and abuse, I was removed from my biological family and I was placed in foster care. And I experienced foster care in group homes for a few years. And if anyone knows anything about foster care or being removed from your natural and biological environment, it makes it difficult for you to learn how to build relationships with people. You learn to stay detached from people because the next week I'm going to be going to a different house, a different home. So why get close to this family if I'm just going to go somewhere else next week? And so that is something that I've had to unpack in my adult life with trying to connect with people and build relationships with people. It is actual work for me. It does not come natural. And so I went through foster care, lived in group homes for a while, and then I was finally adopted into this African-American family. I'm biracial. My mother is white. My father is Black. I spent most of my early childhood with my mother. And so a lot of her traditions, a lot of her way of living rubbed off on me. And so I actually thought I was a white kid growing up for a little bit. So that's what I identified as. And then I was adopted into a very chocolate African-American family where nobody looked like me, nobody sounded like me. Nobody had my texture of hair. Nobody knew how to manage my hair. Okay, and they were a Christian family. My father was a pastor, and my mom served alongside him in ministry. And so they were very strict. I mean, any PK knows we at church
Right.
every day of the week, and you serve it in every ministry. And so I have had enough vacation Bible school, Sunday school, Bible study, everything. I've served in every ministry that you can think of at a very early
You
age.
got enough Sunday school credits for a D-man.
Listen, listen, I should have a degree. I didn't go to seminary. I started seminary and I did full-time ministry
Right.
for a little while. And I was like, I can't deal with the saints this long. Like, Lord, you got to have something more for me than this, Jesus. So I grew up in this very strict Christian home, and the foundation for Christ was laid for me in that home. And things started off normal. They started off okay, as normal as they could be, coming into a home that I didn't know or an environment I didn't know. And so around the age of 12 years old, my adoptive father, who was a very prominent pastor, I want to make that very clear. He wasn't just some I'm not even gonna say what I was going to say because it might offend people.
Right.
But he wasn't no small fry. So he had a lot of influence in the community that he served. And so he was great in his community. He made a lot of great change. He, because of his ministry, thousands have come to know Christ, you know, so he was a giant in the ministry or in the church. And so around the age of 12, he had a conversation with me because it didn't seem like I was fitting in with the family well enough. He said, Ashley, you got to try. You know, we're a family that wants to love you. We're a family that wants to give you the things that you probably would never have had you stay with your biological family. And he just really encouraged me to try to be a part of this family that seemed to want me. And so I decided in that moment, I said, all right, you know what? I'm going to try. I am going to do everything that I can to just switch off all of these feelings that I have of wanting to go back home, wanting to go back to my biological family. And I will adopt, and in essence, that's what adoption is. You adopt the traditions and you adopt whatever you're being invited to. And it's unfortunate because with that adoption, most of the time it's one-sided, where the child has to fit into the other equation. And the other family member doesn't try to fit into that child's equation. And so I said, okay, I'll try to fit in. Instantly became a daddy's girl. Didn't even know what that was until I started I had this feeling of, I just want to be where my dad is all the time. And now you know where he was at church all the time. So I'm at church all the time. I'm getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning on Sundays to go to prayer because that's where he is. And I just wanted, and you never know what you want so badly when you've never had it. And so I knew that I desired to have a relationship with my dad because I never had a relationship with any dad. Started going to church, started hanging out. I get my personality from my dad. He was a clown, you know, he was silly. I'm silly. I have a very bright personality, very big personality. And so he got along with everybody, very charismatic, very kind to anybody. So around 6 months after we had that conversation, my father began to sexually abuse me. A lot of people say
Well,
molestation.
hold on. Let's slow it down. 6 months. So how old are you by this time?
12 and a half.
So you've been in the family how long?
I was adopted when I was about 8 years old.
So we're looking at 4.5 years, roughly.
4.5 years of grooming.
of grooming.
Yes.
6 months after the conversation where he says, look, I need you to put forth some effort. He
Yep.
knew what he was doing. You didn't know what was going
Absolutely.
on.
Absolutely.
6 months after that, what is the manifestation? How does this grooming finally come to some kind of culmination?
Yeah. So it started off as just weird things. And one thing that I tell adults all the time is to listen when kids say something is weird, because that means they don't have the vocabulary to articulate exactly what this uncomfortable thing is that's happening to them. So pay attention to weird. Even in the church, we will know that somebody in the church is a little weird, a little strange. You can't quite pinpoint what's going on with them, but that something off, so pay attention to weird. And so he would do things like go through my undergarments and just leave them in my room on the floor. And at first I thought, well, maybe I dropped them, coming from the bathroom, going to my hamper. I thought I did something. And I noticed that it was something that was happening every single day. And it just confused me. I didn't understand the purpose behind it. Then he would start to burst into the bathroom when I'm showering or washing up in the morning and pretend like it was an accident. Like, oh, I didn't know somebody was in here. Well, first of all, this ain't even your bathroom. We lived in a big enough house where it was at least 3 bathrooms in that house. You had a bathroom in your master bedroom. You never come in this bathroom. Why are you here? So it took me some time to kind of figure out, like, I don't know exactly what this is, but I know that it's not right. And I don't know how to tell somebody. I don't even know what to call it. I don't know what to say, because we don't talk about sex at church. We're just told not to have sex until we get married. Abstinence, purity. I done went to so many True Love Waits conferences. And so that's all they teach you.
Right.
So if I can't even talk about sex, how am I going to tell you that something is making me uncomfortable sexually? I can't even imagine saying that to my parents at that age. So started coming in the bathroom, started coming into my room when I'm getting dressed. I started getting dressed in my closet. Like, I learned how to get dressed in record time. That is something that I know my future husband will appreciate, because it does not take me long to get ready, because it is something that I had to learn to do because of the fear of him bursting in to see me naked.
So at this point, you're literally living under duress.
Yes, every single day.
Every day.
Like my thought process during the school year was, let me see how many clubs and organizations and sports events that I can attend so that I don't have to come home. Let me see how long I can stay at Bible study. Let me see how many ministries at church I can participate in so that I don't have to come home. Or if I do have to come home, let me try to schedule it around the time where I know my mom is going to be there, or when I know my brothers are going to be there, because he did everything that he did when no one was home, when it was just he and I. So that made it challenging for other people to even come in, to walk in, to see anything happening, because they were never there.
It was
calculated. And that's the part. Yes. And he was a very, very smart man, very intelligent man. So he knew exactly what he was doing. And so over time, it progressed. Around the age of 13 or 14 was when I started having cycles. And my father, instead of allowing me to go to OBGYN or to a doctor, he would give me exams himself, physical exams himself.
Whoa.
Yes. Yes. Physical exams.
Please forgive my naivete. I'm really trying to process this part right here.
It's a lot.
So is this a conversation with your mother? Is she involved in this? Like, so how is this even approached? How is he coming to you?
Because even the complexity of this relationship, even though I knew that what he was doing was possibly not right, he was still my dad. and I still loved him, and I still paid attention to what he said, because when he had a conversation with me when I was 12, he said, I'm not going to hurt you in the way that you've been hurt before. Like, he set it up that way to make me think that every offense is not really an offense, because he said he loves me. So this can't possibly be an offense.
It's not whatever happened before. It's not that.
It's not that. Even though it feels like that, even though it sounds like that, even though it quacks like that,
right?
It's not that, right. You know. So, and I'm so impressionable, and I have been for such a very long time up until that point, because my life had just been full of all type of trauma. You know, even before coming into this family, my mother was addicted to drugs and an alcoholic. My dad was an alcoholic. My mother was, we call it lady of the night. You know, she dabbled in
biological parents.
Biological parents.
Okay.
And so my biological father held me at gunpoint and threatened to kill my mother and me if my mom did not allow him to take me. He kidnapped me. We drove all the way from North Carolina to California and was gone. Nobody knew where I was. And there was a period of my life where I just remember older men coming in and out of a room. And I don't know what that meant. And as I get older and I continue to unpack and go to therapy, it leads me to believe that my father trafficked me while we were in California. But I was so young. I just remember images, and I just remember older men coming in.
About how old were you? Do you remember?
About 3 or 4. About 3 or 4 years old. So it was all types of trauma that was just piling up.
Just
layered trauma. Yeah. And nobody thought, well, this child has gone through a lot. Let's put her in some therapy. No, because in the Christian home, we didn't believe in therapy. We believe in prayer.
Right.
Jesus will work it out.
Pray this thing out of you. And I'm like, okay, no.
Jesus is your counselor.
Come on. He is a counselor, but my therapist is in Ohio.
Right.
He is a counselor. He's the great counselor.
Right. But I'm saying that's how the thinking was. It's sort of like Jesus as a counselor is the end all be all. You don't need any other therapy.
You don't need any other assistance. Yeah.
Wow.
So all of these things were happening. My mother was the type of first lady where first lady came first. It was first lady and then wife. It was first lady and then mother. She was all about image, and to this day still is, bless her heart. All about image, and did not want anything to be reflected poorly on her. And so she was always at the church, always in meeting, always facilitating some sort.
So Ashley, let's park there for a minute. Let's unpack right there. I hope you remember where you are in the narrative, because this is most compelling. But I think that's the first area, particularly with first families. The issue of putting image before identity, putting what we want to represent as the family before who we really are at the family, in your case, to the expense of the emotional, psychological, spiritual, and physical health of a child. And because in this case, your father knew that was the preoccupation, it left him all the room he needed to be the predator. So keep moving from there. But I thought that's a point that needs to be made. And I don't think it can be emphasized enough that if we're talking about a spiritual context, there should be some authenticity. I mean, after all, that's what spirituality is about, right? I mean, it's one coming to oneself. But if we're going to use that context for perpetration, then it becomes the antithesis of what spirituality is. So now we end up with what's all too common, and that is a culture of spirituality. The Bible puts it this way. I can't resist, Stephen. I got to go there. Having a form of godliness, but denying the power thereof. I mean, and it's funny because you can't beat church folk at quoting these scriptures. but the application of it,
Come on.
you get what I'm saying? So I think that's a very valid point. Like we choose to ignore things, whether we're aware of those things or not, just by where we put our priority at. And I want people to pay attention to this, particularly pastors, particularly those that are serving in ministry, whatever the context is. Find your authenticity.
Yes,
And if in yourself you find something that can be a detriment to you and do damage to others, go get help. Yeah, you can fast, pray, wonderful. But while you're doing all of that, go talk to somebody about you.
Correct.
So you can get yourself together. And while you're on your way to heaven, so you won't be taking other people through hell like the story we're hearing right now. So Ashley, I hope you still know where you are, but I had to pause there because I think that's the Achilles heel right there, is this charade that we put on, this facade that we put on, and the fact that you say that a first lady is not seeking to be a lady first or a mother first, but she's literally more concerned about the role or the image, the role of first lady. So.
And a part of that was she groomed me to be a first lady.
Right.
And I'm like, no. So I have the grace for it, but I don't have the desire. I don't have the desire for it. But whatever the Lord wants, But one of the things that you touched on about scripture is that my father used scripture to manipulate me to be able to do whatever he wanted to do.
Right.
And the way that he taught me forgiveness was false. He taught me that forgiveness was pretending like you were never offended. And you continue to treat people as if you have never been offended. And so every offense, every time he offended me, he always apologized. He always said he was sorry after every single offense. And I would say, okay, it's okay, I forgive you. Because that's how he taught me what forgiveness was. And so as an adult, I was in these dumb relationships, allowing people to continue to run over me, take advantage of me because they said they were sorry. And I'm forgiving them based off of how my father taught me what forgiveness was. So there are a lot of leaders who use scripture manipulatively. They may not use it to be able to sexually abuse someone, but they definitely use it to their advantage to get something that they want out of it. Right. So that was my experience with the scripture and my father. My mother, again, was really not available to me. I always felt like my mother was jealous of the relationship or the closeness that my father and I had. There were similarities.
Not realizing what it was costing you.
Yes. And she also didn't realize that every single time that I would get in trouble, my punishment was that I'd have to be with her because she knew how much I really disliked her. And so my punishment was I needed to go where she was. She was always at church, running errands, buying a new St. John suit, Donna Karan shoes, whatever. I was with her wherever she was. And she didn't pick up on the fact that I was getting in trouble on purpose so that I would have to be with her often to stay away from my father. Mm-hmm. I got in trouble so much. And she just kept saying, you're a troublemaker. You don't care about your life. Called me dumb, called me stupid because I was not able to perform well academically. Because when I'm at school, I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to navigate through that evening. How am I going to maneuver through that evening? Okay, I know that it's Wednesday. I know that we have Bible study tonight, which means my dad's not going to come home until about 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, which means that I need to go ahead and be in the bed, sleep by 9:45 tops. So every single day during the week was me planning out my evening while I was at school. I barely graduated high school. Barely graduated. And when I did graduate, when I got that diploma, I cried so hard because I did not think that I would graduate. And I definitely didn't think that I would get into a college. And so it was just a surreal moment for me where God was still giving me victory even in the midst of all that I was going through. Like, there's no way I should have graduated. God had to go in there and change some grades because I should not have graduated. So he was still causing me to triumph, even when I didn't know what the heck was going on. So around
Let me
eight,
ask you a question.
yeah,
You talked about the acting out that you did because of what was happening to you. And even with your lack of performance at school, there are
mhm,
parents that are watching this, not understanding why their child is having behavior problems
Mhm.
or they're not getting good grades. Can you quickly uh, speak to what are some of the signs that a parent needs to look out for when a child really doesn't know how to communicate the trauma they're experiencing,
yeah.
but they
Um,
want somebody to ask them the right question? What are some of those signs, and then what are the right questions to ask, and what are the wrong questions or the wrong responses that a parent should have?
yeah, well, the first thing is you actually have to have a good relationship with your child. You have to have good communication skills with your child, consistent ones. I am learning that a child is not going to, my child would not come to me if I didn't have an open door policy, if I haven't been creating this open space of communication since she could communicate. She would not feel comfortable coming to me expressing her feelings. So if all you do is yell at your kids, if all you do is discipline your kids, if all you do is fuss and tell them they can't do this right, you're not doing that right, you need to do better, you're not smart enough. If you're that parent, it don't matter what you ask that kid, they are not going to feel comfortable expressing or being vulnerable with you because you have not created a safe space for them to be. So that's the first thing. If you have set up communication with them, pay attention to their habits. Are their eating habits different? Are their sleeping habits different? Are they less engaged? Are they less inclined to do the things that used to bring them joy? If they loved playing, whatever game system is out, you can tell I don't game. So whatever game system is out, if they're always I'm excited about this, I want to do this as soon as I get home, and then you see a sudden change or a sudden switch up where they're just not interested in the things that used to bring them joy, pay attention to that and begin to ask them questions. You don't have to come out and say, hey, is somebody touching you? But you can ask them, hey, I noticed that, you used to enjoy this and now I see that you don't. What has changed? And it could just be that maybe they've reached a point of maturity where they're like, oh, games don't interest me anymore. Or my attention has shifted to art, or I want to do music, or I want to do this. So just pay attention to those sudden switch ups, and then pay attention to the subtle ones as well. You really have to pay attention. And sometimes it's hard as parents, especially as a single mom, or as a single parent. It can be challenging to be all to that child, do everything, be their therapist, cook for them, clean for them, making sure that their grades are well, making sure that you are working full time to provide for them so the lights stay on, doing all of these things, and then making sure that they are emotionally okay, making sure that they are mentally okay. You have to begin to create safe spaces for that child to be able to talk to you. If you grew up in a household like mine, we grew up in a dictatorship. You gonna do it because I said so. Well, why? Like, kids just want to understand the why.
Right.
It's not that they have a problem or they won't respect or honor your no.
Right.
They just don't understand why the no. And so when I communicate with my daughter is 16 years old, and we have had this open communication since she could communicate. And when I tell you she tells me everything and anything, some stuff I'm like, God, could have held that one. But she's comfortable telling me any and everything. But that is something that has been built over time.
Hmm.
And even when I have to get on her about certain things, after I fuss at her and I get her together, then I circle back and I check on her because she's so sensitive. And so I say, I'm saying these things, the things that we say, I'm doing this because I love you,
Right.
it's true. I'm redirecting you because I love you and because I want you to be able to be comfortable and confident in the decisions that you make when you are an adult. So I'm equipping you to be an adult. You're 16 years old now. You're getting older. You're going to be making adult decisions in a few years. I'm not going to be here telling you what to do. I'll still guide you if you want me, my input. But legally, you can make decisions where you don't need my input or my decision.
Right.
So you have to build that with your child over time. If you haven't done a good job at being that parent, you can start today.
Right.
And you can even, I know a lot of parents don't believe in it, but I apologize to my child often because I don't get this parenting thing right all the time because I never had a good parent. So I tried to figure out what parenting is. And sometimes I figured it out by getting it wrong. And so I had to circle back and say, hey, you know what, babe? I got this thing wrong. I'm sorry. I know I hurt your feelings because I said it to you this way, but this is what I really meant. This is the point that I was trying to make. Do you understand what I'm trying to say to you? And then tell me how you feel about that. Give them a space to where their feelings are valid.
Right.
We don't give our kids an opportunity to be emotional. We don't give them an opportunity to have feelings. They're not allowed to have feelings. There are little things that we tell what to do. They're like, a lot of parents treat their kids like pets.
Yeah.
Sit down, be quiet, eat. Here goes some water. Go outside and run around and play. And that's it. There is no type of investment in their emotional
I was
well-being
going
or
to say
their
an
mental.
emotional trust. And I think that's so critical. People have to
Yes,
have an emotional trust. I mean, if any place should be your safe place, it should be your parents, right? Uh,
absolutely.
what so if a parent is watching right now and they're trying to build that trust and they may already have done too little too late and they sense that all of those indicators you just gave, they're checking all those boxes. What can they do now? How do they approach this to try to intervene so that it doesn't become worse?
Yeah, just start with the conversation. Just a sit down. Like I am a sit down person, and I know my daughter. Now I get on her nerves, and I'm like, "Come on, let's talk about this." And
Right.
she already knows, like, okay, it's gonna be about an hour,
Right.
But carve out some time and have a conversation with them, and just ask them, "How do you feel about my parenting? What are some
Right.
concerns that you have, or what are some things that I do as a parent? Like this, when I tell you this will humble you real quick, it'll humble you real quick. But you ask them, what are some things that I do as your parent that you don't particularly like,
Right.
or that make you feel like you're not heard, or make you feel like your place in this family does not matter or it doesn't count. And listen to what they have to say,
Right.
and they may not open up the first time, but you've initiated the conversation, and then circle back around a week later, 2 weeks later, like just start with the conversation and build from there.
So let's take a sharp right turn. And with this sharp right turn, I want to look at two parts. One, how long did this abuse last with your father, and what finally brought it to an end? When it
So
came,
the
go ahead.
No, I was going to answer. Go ahead.
Okay. And when it came to an end, I want you to talk some about the journey from there, because I'm sure that's where the real journey began. So that's one part I want you to talk about. The
Okay.
the other part I want you to deal with, to put a bow on this, if I can use that terminology, I want you to speak to pastors and leaders, male or female, about some of their gestures and their interactions, uh, how they engage, and maybe some things that they may think are no harm, but that can actually be scary for someone who has been molested or abused, or it can be interpreted that way. Because again, to our subject, Silence of the Lambs, I think the church just, we play this whitewash game, you know, as you said earlier, because it's church, we just sanitize everything and whitewash everything, not realizing that if, and I'm gonna just go there, that if a person is a pedophile out in the world, and if they haven't got that under check, then they brought their pedophilic nature to church. And I don't care if you put deacon on it or youth leader on it, they still have that. But because they're checking all the church boxes. Yeah. And maybe they haven't been registered as a sex offender because they never got caught or nobody's ever reported them. We don't know they're there. And then a child comes and reports to somebody. They say, oh, not Deacon so-and-so.
Yeah.
And now you're demonizing the child. Oh, they just have flights of fancy. No, this child know what happened to them. So I want you to speak to that so that we can deal with, because here's what I've noticed. This is where the deafening silence has been. And I'm gonna just say it. As a pastor, as a leader, the deafening silence within the church has been around the Me Too movement. Stephen, maybe you've heard something different, but I haven't heard a whole lot in the church at large. I'm not talking about a particular church. I'm talking about what we call the body of Christ at large. I haven't heard our support.
Yeah, because we give so much grace to the gifted. Give them that pass. But I could say more, but Ashley, go ahead and...
So please say more.
So those two, Stephen, you got to wrap it up. You're gonna have to do the wrap up. So what you got, we want it. All right. So Ashley, speak to that. How did it come to an end? What were the effects of that, the residue of that? What was your journey out of that, which I'm sure continues to this day? And then speak to pastors and leaders about things they need to pay attention to make sure they're creating a safe space for young men and young women and not creating a predatory environment.
Yeah. So I'm a use a term my pastor used. I'm cut across the field.
Right.
And he always uses that for people who don't come to Bible study and don't understand the context. So I'm a cut across the field. So the abuse stopped at 19 years old.
Wait, hold on. Oh, stop. You can't keep hitting us like this.
My birthday is.
Hold on. Let me give a timeline.
Okay.
You get to the family at 8 years old.
Yes.
Roughly. You're groomed from 8 to 12 and a half.
Yes.
The physical manifestations start showing up at 12 and a half. One little piece. I think this is where we stopped at. So when you start having your cycle, he's actually doing your gynecological exams, correct?
Yes.
And how old are you by this point?
13, 14.
So talk a little bit about the evolution of that. And then, so from 13, 14 to 18.
Yeah.
So what was the evolution between that point and how does it come to an end?
So the biggest part of I'll say the biggest struggle as far as working through the abuse for me was around the ages of the abuse that happened between 14 and 19. I had two brothers that were their biological children. And I believe, well, I'm not even going to say that because I don't know if that's true or not. So what I am going to say is this. One day I came home and my father was in our living room sitting at our computer desk, and he had an ottoman sitting next to the computer chair, and he asked me to sit down next to him. So I sat down. He pulled up pornography on the computer and he accused me of watching pornography. And of course, I'm not looking at it because number one, I didn't even know it existed at that point. I just was not a part of a circle where that's what we talked about at all. So this was new to me. I didn't know it existed. And so he turned it on and he accused me of watching it. He said that somebody had been watching it on the family computer. And so because I would not admit to it, he made me strip down naked and sit next to him and watch pornography for about an hour and a half. And he continued to tell me to admit to what I had done. And when I tell you, like, that was the most uncomfortable space I've ever been in, like, it still makes me uncomfortable because my physical body was responding or reacting to what I was viewing. I had never experienced any of those hormones or any of those feelings. And so I didn't know what was going on. And because I was aroused, I latched onto this thought that, oh, I must have wanted this abuse. And so I sat there and continued to have to watch this. And then finally, I admitted, even though I didn't do it, I said that I did so that this could end. So I put my clothes on, and then that became a routine. And so not only did he expose me to pornography, it became a part of the sexual abuse that continued from 14 to 19 years old, where it was something that was viewed. So when you hear people say, well, let's just pray it away. I can't pray away some of these thoughts, some of these memories, because they're there. Like, I remember them. So that was one of the hardest pieces to work through as far as the abuse was concerned. For me, I became rebellious against it around the age of 17. And what happened at 17 was I was I was competing in a pageant, and it was my first time. And my father really, he set it up nicely for me, bought me this expensive ball gown, paid for my registration, paid for my hair, nails, makeup, all this stuff, even bought me a room where at the hotel where the event was taking place. And so I'm still like giving him an opportunity to be dad, because I still want him to get it right. I want him to get it together, because again, he taught me forgiveness is pretending like you weren't hurt. But there was also something that God has placed in me, that there's a compassion piece that God has placed in me, where it is very challenging for me to just write somebody off. And that's for anybody that has offended me in life, period. It's hard for me to just dismiss them, because I know that there's something more to why they are doing this. And so at 17, my father runs a bath for me in this hotel, and I'm in the tub, and he comes in to get into the tub with me. And so at that point, I stood up, I'm completely naked. I grab a towel, and I have to physically fight him to get out of the bathroom. And then I'm running down the hallway with nothing on but a towel. And I go downstairs to the courtyard area. This is on a Friday night, around 5-6 o'clock in the evening, downtown in Charlotte. And I'm sitting outside in a towel. And do you know, not one person came to me and said, "Are you okay?
Wow.
Is something wrong?" I am a teenager outside in a towel, surrounded by people who are either getting off from work at rush hour, or they're coming downtown to enjoy their weekend festivities. And nobody says anything to me. So I'm sitting down there for about an hour to 2 hours. I go to a payphone, call one of my best friends, said, "Hey, this just happened to me. I need somebody to come pick me up, but I can't just go, so I need to go get my clothes." So I walked back up to the room. And at that point, while I was walking down the hallway, something switched. I don't know if it was Satan or not, but something switched in my head. And I said, you know what? I'm about to whoop his, he about to get the business. And so there was this boldness that I had, and this awakening that I had, where I'm like, this is BS. Like, this is wrong. So I go into the room. He's not there. He left me a note on the bed. And in the note, it was an itemized receipt for every expense that everything that he had purchased for this pageant. It equaled up to about $1,300. And at the bottom, he wrote, This is what I owe because I didn't make it worth his time. So
this is your father.
my father, the pastor, the bishop.
Jeez.
Yes, totally bishopness. So he came back because he couldn't go home without me, or else my mom would ask questions. So he came back and I was ready to confront him. And when he came in the room, he was hitting his head like with his hand, like he was having a psychological fit. And he was just like, I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm so sorry. Like, I'm just crazy. I have all these thoughts and I just don't know what to do with them. Like he was going crazy. I knew it was an act, or I felt like it was an act. And I was just like, I'm ready to go home. Like at that point, I didn't have any patience for it. I didn't have, he would not continue to do it. And I'd be okay with it. And so we got home and my mom didn't even ask me, well, how was the pageant? How did it go? She didn't ask me anything. She didn't care. She never cared about anything but herself, and maybe her biological kids. So coming to the house, and then from 17 to 19 years old, my birthday is late in the year. So I graduated at 19. So that's why I stayed in the home as long as I did, because I also didn't recognize that I'm legally an adult and I can leave if I want to,
Right.
But my parents didn't equip me to be independent. So I didn't mentally, I'm 14, 15 years old. So at 19 years old, I get accepted into college. And of course I'm going because it is far away from here. And the conversation that I had with my father before I left for college, I asked him, I said, how can you get in the pulpit, stand in the pulpit and preach to the people of God? And how can you write a book about what it means to be a father and come home and molest me?
Whoa, hold on.
Listen.
What happened now? He wrote a what?
Oh, he wrote a book. He wrote a book about what it means to be a father, as a faith-based book, using scriptures and everything. So you know what you're doing is wrong. And so you've written a book about it. Again, big time, prominent man of God, had Bible college. You know the word of God and you know exactly what you're doing and you know it's wrong. So I confronted him and said, how can you know all of this? How can you have all this knowledge and know God as much as you know him, and then you come home and molest me? And his response was that he'd always had a struggle with lust. He's always had issues with women. And I said, well, I'm not just a woman. I was your daughter. I was somebody that you selected to be a part of this family, to love and protect. You didn't do that. You failed to do that. And then he began to cry. And so Ashley, with her old sensitive self, and her old compassionate self, felt like, man, I can't smack him in the head like I want to. Right now I can smack him with my words, but I still don't feel like that is what God wants me to do in this moment. I felt like God was saying, it's not my responsibility to try and vindicate myself. It's not my responsibility to try to get him back in that moment. So I went downstairs, and that evening I had a conversation with my mom and my dad. And the conversation was them giving me advice before I left for college that weekend. My mother said to me, if you get pregnant, this is the only thing she said to me. If you get pregnant, you cannot live here.
Wow.
That was her motherly, congratulations, you're going off to college advice. If you get pregnant, you cannot live here.
What prevented you from telling her? Did you ever attempt to tell her about what was going on?
I didn't attempt to tell her while I lived there because I knew that she would not care.
Okay.
I knew that she would not do anything to change it. And if she did not care and he knew that she did not care, it would have gotten worse. So I tried to manage the situation as much as I could, from the mental space that I tried to do in a way that made sense to me, where I'm only going to take the minimum. So my dad's advice to me was, do not be in a room alone with a guy, period. That was their advice to me. So I'm like, okay. So the advice that I listened to, of course, was my mom's. If you get pregnant, you can't live here. Because when I go to college, I have to come back. I have to come back for Thanksgiving. I have to come back for Christmas. I have to come back for spring break. I have to come back for summer.
Right.
So it's another 4 years of this crap with my dad, you know, and I still don't recognize that I'm an adult and I don't have to endure this. I don't even have to come back if I don't want to.
Right.
But that's my provider. That's the
Because
person that's
you've got an arrested development because of what you've been subject to. That's designed to keep you diminished.
Yes. So I go to college, and in the first 2 weeks, I'm pregnant on purpose.
Wow.
I had a mission. Okay. It had nothing to do with enjoyment, had nothing to do with pleasure, because up until that point, I still had never willingly had sex. I was never interested in having sex. I was not interested in a man to save my life because I was trying to get away from a crazy one.
Right.
So when I went to college, I got pregnant on purpose. And I did not care if the man wanted to be a part of that child's life or not. He was not a part of the equation. I just needed a deposit from
That
him.
was your out.
That was my out.
Because your mom
in
said if
mind,
you get pregnant, you don't live here. You say, okay.
You cannot live here anymore. And I knew that she would honor that. I knew that she would.
Wow.
So I came back home. I disclosed that I was pregnant. And sure enough, she said, well, you can't live here anymore. And I said, well, glory be to God. You know, like this is what I wanted to hear so that I could get out of this house. But of course, I didn't think that through because I'm like, oh, but what's the next step? I'm pregnant. I don't have any insurance. I don't have a job. I don't know how to make a living. I don't even know how to fill out an application. I don't know what I'm supposed to do next. So then that's when I learned how to survive. And I spent 10 years surviving, like trying to figure it out and trying to raise a kid. So I had my daughter when I was 20 years old. And immediately I said, I got to be a parent. I don't have time to deal with my trauma. I don't have time to try to unpack this stuff. I have to try to figure this parenting thing out for my daughter because I know what I didn't like growing up as a child, and I don't want her to experience that.
Wow.
So I spent 10 years just making dumb decisions while trying to navigate through a new norm and not deal with any of my trauma at all. And so when I made the decision in 2014, I decided like this is all still very fresh and very new.
2014, yeah, that's just like yesterday.
In 2014, I started going to therapy because I was not happy with the decisions that I was making. Relationally, financially, I was living in poverty by choice because nobody ever taught me how to live within my means. Nobody ever taught me about budgets. I just was not prepared to be an adult. So, and I thank God for the people that saw my struggle and saw me making these decisions and reached out to me like my aunt and said, Ashley, you have to do better by your child. Let me help you. And if it weren't for her helping me, and I mean helping me, practically being the other parent for my child would not have turned out as well as she has.
Wow.
So I have to give her props because if it was just me, ain't no telling what kind of condition she would be in. I'm just saying, because I like to have fun. So instead of confronting issues, you know, we just be having fun all the time. But she provided structure. And while my aunt helped raise my daughter, she helped raise me as an adult, you know, helping me go back to those areas that I missed in development. And she helped me to develop and to catch up to where I should be. So at 2014, I started therapy and I started unpacking my issues. And I started realizing that I don't have to live life this way, that I have options, that I can actually heal, I can actually make good decisions. And in 2000, and I did therapy for about 9 months. And my therapist said, you've made great progress. You've done a really great job. Let's begin to unpack the sexual abuse that you experienced. And she encouraged me to disclose my abuse. So 2015 in August, I made the decision where I'm going to disclose, I'm going to tell what happened to me, but I'm going to do it in a way that honors God. I'm going to do it in a way that speaks to what he has done in this situation. And I'm going to do it in a way that does not point the finger, because it was not about, it wasn't about blame at that point. It was about me recognizing that I could heal, and that I could also be an example to others, to let them know that they could heal too, and that they could overcome. So I disclosed in a YouTube video, and I basically said that I had been sexually abused. I experienced child sexual abuse throughout my life. And I didn't have to be defined by it, that I could heal from it, and that I could still, I still qualify for everything that God always had for me. Never said who my abuser was, never insinuated who it was, because again, it wasn't about pointing the finger. So because my father decided to respond to it, people begin to put the pieces together. Now, there were already allegations within the body, his church. And then there were already things that people were wondering, well, he has this daughter that he's always talking about, but we've never seen her, because after I left home, I never went back. I never went back to that church. I never went back to hang out with them, to see them, because at that point I was free and I did not want to go back to my bondage. Listen, so for 10 years, his church is hearing about this mysterious daughter, but ain't nobody ever seen her. And so, they're wondering, like, where is this daughter? Who is she? And so I was still connected with a lot of people on social media that went to his church. And they reached out to me after I posted the video, and they said, are you talking about your father? There was nobody else that they could think of besides my father. And I never responded to him. I never said, yes, it was my father, because it wasn't about that. Yes. So I put this video out on Sunday. That following Saturday, I get a phone call from a member of the church asking me, had I heard anything? And I said, no, what's going on? And they informed me that my father had died to a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the chest. 6 days after I disclosed my abuse, that I never said his name.
Never said his name.
Never said his name, never insinuated it was a relative. I didn't even go into detail about the abuse that I experienced. Out of the 10-minute video, 9 of it was encouragement. 9 of it was hope. 9 of it was, you can overcome this. Yeah. 1 minute of it was, I've experienced this great tragedy, but, most of the emphasis was on the but. So I got that phone call and immediately felt like I had a week of a burden being lifted, where I was able to finally let go of this secret that I've been holding on to for years. And then I felt like I had just been smacked with a totally different burden. Like I traded one burden for another. Yeah. And immediately knew that people were going to blame me for this. They were going to blame me, even though they documented it as an accidental self-inflicted gunshot wound to the chest. And I rolled my eyes very heavy with the accident. That is what is documented as, but whatever to it. So people at the church blamed me. People inboxed me and said, this is your fault. You should not have said anything. And then my mother didn't even call me to tell me that he passed away. I had to hear it from someone else. And then I had to watch the news, and I had to watch all of these people post things on my social media about, we're so sorry for your loss, before my own mother called me to tell me.
Wow.
So again, she was busy trying to preserve the image, and figuring out how to manipulate the story to where, this man would be honored and his legacy would be honored. And we would just totally dismiss, why this thing happened.
Yeah.
We just gonna pretend like we don't know why he's no longer with us. We just know he's no longer with us. And we're gonna honor all the good things that he's ever done. So they worked really fast, and they had a good team, to spin it however they wanted to. My mother called me a couple of days later and asked me if I was coming to the funeral. And I said, well, I didn't know if I was invited to the funeral. I didn't know if I should show up. And so she said, well, let me talk to your brothers to see if they want you there. I said, okay. I didn't know how to take that, because a part of me is still like, I still love my dad. I still want to honor him, because he was not just a pedophile. He wasn't just a perpetrator. Let me say that. He was also very fatherly. And there were a lot of things that he taught me that I still benefit from to this day. There were good things that he deposited. And people have a hard time with that. There are complexities to abuse within the family.
Right.
Especially if it's a respected person, and if it's somebody of character who has, somewhat respect, and someone who is the provider of the family. There were great things that he deposited in my life. Had it not been for him, I wouldn't know Christ as well as I do. I wouldn't know context as well as I do. And I wouldn't be debating people on social media about context if he didn't deposit those things. He laid
And actually, the fact that you're still connected and involved in church after
yes.
all of this happening from somebody who's
Listen,
pivotal in the church space.
I went a year not involved in the church because I was angry with God. I was angry with God after, when my dad died. Like that was it for me, because I was like, Lord, I have endured a lot. And I felt like God was just telling me, like, hold on, like it's gonna make sense. Like, I'm gonna use it. I'm gonna use it for your benefit. I'm gonna use it for your benefit. Like, that's all I kept hearing God say for a very long time. And I'm like, Lord, you running out of time, because I don't have the patience for it anymore. Like, I don't have the ability to handle anything else. Like, I don't. And I gave up. Like, for a year, I didn't want to talk to God. I didn't want to fight against any issue. I didn't want to fight for myself. I just wanted to be depressed. I wanted to be sad. I wanted people to leave me alone. I wanted people to feel sorry for me. And then I wanted people to just stop talking to me, just leave me be. I did that for a year. And it got to a point where God was like, all right, Ash, now it's time to start pulling you out of this. Let's pull you out. But people, when I did go to the funeral, um, and I had people come up to me at the funeral and tell me that I should not be there. I didn't deserve to be there,
Wow.
because it's my fault that he's dead. He had the clergy, whatever you call it, I don't know all of these things, because he was a part of a organization, and they had it was the liturgy. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Yeah, they had all that wonderful, they honored him. Okay. Had his robe and all that stuff, in the chair, honored him. I mean,
Sure.
he went out honored. And he went out in this church, and I posted a picture about it. I posted the church because the church literally looks like a castle. It seats tens of thousands of people where his funeral was held. And so I put that picture up to give people perspective, to recognize what I was up against by myself. I had to fight against the greatness of somebody who was funeralized or memorialized as a king.
Yeah.
And I had to do it by myself, because as much as the church and the people of God say that they care, they really didn't.
Sure.
They
Yeah.
really don't, So it was very hard for me, at that point to continue being this crusader for Christ, because I hadn't seen any of the goodness of the Lord that we talk about. I'm singing about it, I'm talking about it, I'm hearing about it, but where is it? I haven't experienced it. So I spent a year just being depressed and trying to figure this thing out. Finally got out of that space in 2016. And I began to just work in this field. And I became a certified instructor for child sexual abuse prevention. And I just started training adults. I would go to different churches. Of course, I was met with disinterest with some, but there were a lot of churches that were like, yeah, come in and train our adults. And so that's what I did. I started with just training people, and I footed the cost.
Got it.
Were you going to ask a question?
Yeah. So you talk about the training. So what are some of those things that you train pastors and leaders not to do?
So I have a resource for pastors and leaders.
Yes.
Great resource. This is called Becoming a Church That Cares Well for the Abused. It is an actual curriculum. This is the handbook.
Excellent.
I'm going to tell you what's so great about it. This is a 12-week course that is totally free online. You can take the book, you can download for free on the website. And the website, I believe, is churchcares.com. Yes, it's churchcares.com. And you can download the handbook, or if you want a hard copy like I have, it's literally $4.95 for this. And in this book, they don't just talk about sexual abuse. They talk about abuse of power. They talk about domestic abuse. They talk about all types of abuse. If you are a pastor or leader, you need to take this training. This is not our training as far as the organization that I work for, but I use this when I talk to a lot of churches and pastors, because I am a person of faith and my organization is not faith-based, but my organization knows that I'm gonna talk about God, Listen, and I let people know this is not what the organization stands for, but this is Ashley. So because I believe that it's important for us to have concrete facts and data and research and proof, because our organization is evidence informed. And so it's good to have all of that, but we also need to know how to tie it in with scripture and what the word of God says, and learn why we need to do a better job at caring for the abused. One of the things that I have learned with caring for the abused is that a lot of pastors, this is just what I've come across, because believe it or not, I love pastors. I love y'all, I joke about y'all, but I love you, I have a soft spot for leadership.
I halfway like them.
I deal with them, So I have a heart for them because I understand it's not easy. I've seen, I actually saw my father be a good shepherd, a good pastor. So I know it's not easy. I know it's hard. But one of the things that I have learned is that there is a generation of pastors that are dealing with issues that maybe their fathers who were pastors didn't have to deal with, because we lived in this world of silence. Yes. So if I'm a member of a church, like my grandmother, she was not going to go to her pastor and say, I'm being abused, because you just didn't do that, But our generation is like, hold up, I don't have to be oppressed. I need help. Who's the first person I'm going to? My pastor. He's my leader. Or she's my leader. So I'm going to my leadership to say, hey, I have this issue and I need you to help me with it. Where the ball gets dropped is a lot of pastors are not equipped to handle these. And they don't know how to say that. I'm not equipped.
Yes. Because they will just all things to all people.
Yeah. And they ignore it. But what I tell pastors all the time is, you can be honest and say, I don't know how to respond appropriately to your issue. I've never dealt with it. I can't appropriately counsel you on it. But this is where community comes in.
Correct.
Where you say, you know what, I can't but I'm gonna hand you off to somebody that can, or I'm gonna give you a referral to this therapist.
That's it.
Because this is what you need and they're going to help you. And as your pastor, I'm going to continue to pray with you. My door is going to be open to you. We can talk about as much as you want to. I will be a listening ear. I may not be able to give you advice. I may not be able to respond in the way that you want me to respond, but I'm here to listen and I'm here to refer you if I'm not equipped to handle this.
Cool. Man, that's an amazing resource, Ashley. Thank you for sharing that. You just gave me my next series at Salem. Thank you.
Yes, and 12 weeks, and it's free.
And it's free, yes. So Pastor came talking, it ain't in the budget, Doc. Free is in the budget, Doc.
In the budget.
Get the resource. Ashley, how can people reach you? And you've got a book that people need to read. So tell people how to reach you, how to get access to your book and everything that you offer.
Yes, so I have a book. I'm going to show it to you. It's called Defiant Girl. Everything for me is Advocate Ashley. And the reason why everything is Advocate Ashley is because I am advocating for everyone, not just sexual abuse survivors, but I'm also advocating for pastors, leaders who don't know what to do. I'm here for you. Like, if you don't know what to do, just reach out and say, hey, I don't know what to do. Humble yourself. And say, you don't know. Humble yourself, Pastor. Come on.
Right.
So my website is advocateashley.com. And then this is my book, Defiant Girl, Living a Good Life After Trauma. And it is just a little bit of my story, but most of it is talking about my journey through healing and my journey of forgiveness, because I do believe in forgiveness. But the real forgiveness, I've come to the truth of what forgiveness really is, which is I can forgive you, but it doesn't mean I have to have a relationship with you. Yes. I can break up with you and forgive you and be on my way, you know? Mm-hmm. So everything is advocateashley.com, and on social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Advocate Ashley.
Ashley, thank you.
Hold on, Stephen. I want to say one thing to those that are viewing. You see her Cash App. She didn't ask for anything. She came purely out of relationship. Stephen reached out to her, and Ashley, again, just thank you.
Thank you.
From the bottom of our hearts. Thank you so much for your transparency, for your courage, and for your positive spirit. You talk about that heart you have. That's a gift from God to be able to have a heart of true forgiveness. And to be able to stand in that truth. So I'm asking everybody, just support everything that she's doing. I mean, you see she's giving away free resources. You also have 2 other pages on Instagram that I want you to tell people about, that are resources that will help them with personal management and other areas of their life. Talk about those so they can connect to those. But go to her Cash App right now, $Advocate Ashley. And just tell her you appreciate her, you love her, thank her for this wealth of knowledge that she shared with us, and for the openness, the transformation that happens through somebody being open about their story. Go and support her, and thank you again. But give what are those 2 other platforms on IG?
So on IG, I have 2 businesses. One is called The Desk Babe, and that is me providing templates for entrepreneurs or business professionals who do workshops and they don't have the time to design their own worksheets and things like that. I design editable ones where you can just download it, put your information in, and send it on, you know. So that is The Desk Babe. And then I have RLSD, which stands for Released, which is my clothing brand, which talks about how you sharing your story can help others. It doesn't matter what you've gone through. If you would just be transparent and open with other people and talk about whatever you've gone through and how you've overcome it, that is how others will overcome. So that is RLSD brand. So yeah, but everything is on my
a superhero in feminine form. I told you at the beginning of this conversation.
Yeah. And I also, just so you all know, like, if I deal heavily with Me Too movement as well. I was actually featured on one of their events not too long ago. And so I do a lot of work in the sexual violence world as well, and also dealing with the legal side of things as well. So with changing laws and things like that. So if you have questions outside, because I'm sure there are some professionals that are watching as well. If you have questions about any of that, I have a lot of resources, so just reach out. I'm easy, like Sunday morning.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
And y'all need to call her and book her for your Zoom conferences.
Yes.
Start fly her in. She's an amazing gift and will shed light in areas that you need light shed upon for your organization, for your ministry. So connect with Ashley, please.
Thank you
Listen,
all.
it's been a great day. This has been a great session. Again, thank you, Ashley. We appreciate you at the Revolution for dropping knowledge today, shedding insight, opening your heart so that you could help somebody else, because that's what our purpose is. Rick, thank you for connecting with us today. Y'all go check out Ricky Thursday nights at 8 p.m. Central. It's 8 or 8:30.
It's
I'm
8 o'clock. Yes, 8 p.m. Central Standard
8
Time.
p.m.
I
Central
had to think
Standard
about it
Time.
myself.
Yeah.
It's still Saturday morning.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so
8
please plug
p.m.
in.
Life Talks. Yes, sir.
Get the life talk. It's going to change your life. So please plug into what he's doing. And then you can catch me on Tuesdays at 3 p.m. with the Mirror Moment Central Standard Time on Facebook. Appreciate y'all. Hit the share button. Let somebody else know about this. Hit the @ symbol, type their name in. Somebody in your circle of influence needs to hear what was shared today.
Send this out. We put this out on purpose. Normally we're just in our Facebook group, but today we put this on all of our platforms. So go ahead and share it now. Share with at least 10 other people, particularly pastors, parents, ministry leaders, counselors. Share this. It's timely, it's necessary, and we can't be silent anymore. The lambs are suffering. I hear the bleating of the sheep, and we need to do something about it and heal. While we're healing the land, let's heal the lambs.
That's it, Ray.
Yes, sir. Thank you again, Ashley.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you all.
All right. Y'all have a great Saturday.
You too.
All right. Bye-bye.